Hey everybody, it's Gordon Majak here, back with another episode of Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. Today we are going to motor down the coast to Southern California to check out the Southern California pop rock scene from the early 1980s. Before we do that, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment below and tell me what you think of all this groovy music that we have been sharing here for the last month or so. Okay, who are we talking about today? You see it in the title. It's right there in the title. It's this little record right here. Glenn Frey. Why does that name sounds familiar? A song called The One You Love. Glenn Frey. Oh yeah, Glenn Frey of the Eagles. Now, like you, I first became aware of Glenn Frey in 1972 when the Eagles released their first big hit, Take It Easy. I know exactly where I was when I heard that song. I was in my mom's living room, I wasn't living on the stereo, I was listening on the stereo, and I heard that song. Take It Easy, the Eagles' first big hit in 1972, sung by Glenn Frey. Oh, also on that album, a little song called Peaceful Easy Feeling, also sung by Glenn Frey. And then on the next album, Glenn Frey had a little hit called Tequila Sunrise. And then on the next album, Glenn Frey had another little hit called Already Gone. And then on the next Eagles album, Glenn Frey had another little hit called Lion Eyes. One of my all-time, that's a top 10. We're going to get to that one. Oh, and then on the next album, Glenn Frey had another hit called New Kid in Town. Oh, and then on the next Eagles album, Glenn Frey had another hit called Heartache Tonight. You get the picture. Glenn Frey wrote and sang a number of huge hit records with the Eagles. Now, when the Eagles broke up after the Long Run album, or some might say the Long Run fiasco in 1980, the Eagles broke up, and that was supposedly going to be all we were going to hear from them. They said they would consider reuniting when hell freezes over. Well, as it turned out, in hindsight, we know now that hell did in fact freeze over in 1994, and the band did reunite. But back there in the early 80s, after they had broken up in 1980, there wasn't much, we weren't hearing much from the Eagles or anyone associated with the Eagles until the spring and summer of 1982. And that's when Glenn Frey jumped out with the first Eagles solo album, an album called No Fun Aloud. Now, Don Henley, of course, would follow up Glenn Frey's solo album with his own solo album later in 1982, but Glenn Frey got there first. So let's talk about Glenn Frey. In their infinite wisdom, the record company, why I can't imagine, took it upon themselves to release a couple of other songs off of the album as the first few attempts at singles. Now, they could have just asked me, because as a longtime Glenn Frey aficionado, going all the way back to Take It Easy, as I had said, 10 years previous to this record, they could have just asked me, and I would have told them, because I bought the album when it first came out, being a big Glenn Frey fan. Kind of a disappointing album, okay? There was a couple songs on there. There were a few songs, but far and away the best song was sort of an uncharacteristic Glenn Frey song, and that was this beautiful ballad called The One You Love. Now, this came out in the summer of 1982, made it to number 15 on the pop chart. Not bad. Most people aren't expecting a ballad from Glenn Frey, and especially without the name recognition of the Eagles. Number 15 is pretty decent. All the way up to number 2 on the adult contemporary chart. I found this song, as I said, when Glenn Frey's solo album came out, and I was so excited to hear it, and I went and bought it, and boy, what a disappointment. But as I said, there were a couple songs on there that were pretty decent, and this was certainly the best of the bunch. And I started playing this song as one of my slow songs in the club almost immediately. So I was pretty tickled a few months later when the record company finally got around to it and released this as a single, and it was on the radio, and then other people could go, oh yeah, Glenn Frey. Well, I'd already been playing it for 3 or 4 months, but that's okay. It's a great song, a little bit uncharacteristic, what you might expect from Glenn Frey, and as you'll see when I pause it in the middle, there is an interesting similarity though. I wonder if we can figure out what it is. From his debut solo album, this is ex-Eagle. At that time, he was an ex-Eagle, Glenn Frey, and a song called The One You Love. Boy, not what you were expecting from Glenn Frey. Right? Did you pick up on the little, why does this sound vaguely familiar? There's something familiar about this, even though Glenn Frey has not done anything like, wait a second. What was that last big hit on that Eagles album in 1980, The Long Run, before they broke up? Oh yeah, it was that gorgeous Timothy B. Schmidt ballad, a little thing called I Can't Tell You Why. And oh yeah, Glenn Frey had a hand in arranging that song when Timothy Schmidt brought it into the studio for the band, because it was such an unusual sound for an Eagles song. And Glenn Frey ran with that, and we got the result of I Can't Tell You Why, an incredible piece of music. Well, now, a couple of years later, here's Glenn Frey returning to a somewhat vaguely familiar, vaguely similar ballad format, kind of a nice, just floating, grooving little ballad with a very sincere vocal, kind of like that Timothy Schmidt song just a few years earlier. Go ahead, Glenn. Show some range. Glenn Frey had range. And this song proves it. What you gonna say when he comes over? There's no easy way to see this through.
wanna stay with the one who loves you, or are you going back to the one you love? Someone's gonna cry when they know they've lost you. Someone's gonna thank the stars above.
Now, I would submit what we have here is a situation where Glenn Frey, having contributed to the great song I Can't Tell You Why that Timothy Schmit brought into the Eagles on the long run, I would submit that what we have here is Glenn Frey thought to himself, you know what? I can write a ballad with a groove like that. Let me see what I can do. And left to his own devices, this is what he came up with. Not bad, Glenn. Best song on the album, and I would argue right up there with the very best songs in his solo career. It's always funny when artists from famous bands go solo to see how similar their stuff is to the band. Does it sound like the band? Does it sound like just them doing their own thing and sorting out sort of the musical influences and the musical vibes when they're doing a solo record? Like with Lindsey Buckingham, the other day we were doing Lindsey Buckingham's Soul Drifter, and you can't miss the Fleetwood Mac sound in it, but that's because that element of Fleetwood Mac sound is, of course, Lindsey Buckingham. Similarly with Glenn Frey in the Eagles, here we have a situation where this was not a type of song that Glenn Frey had really written with the Eagles up until the point of I Can't Tell You Why, the Timothy Schmit song. So now I know Henley and Frey get co-composer credits on I Can't Tell You Why, so I'm acknowledging their contribution to that song, but of course the idea of the song, it was a Timothy Schmit song. But here we have Glenn Frey doing something in a similar vein, and yet it's dissimilar to certainly anything he himself did in the Eagles. So I'd say Glenn was quite the sponge there, and being front and center in the Eagles production process and arrangements of all those songs. And Glenn, in hindsight, of course, after he passed there 5 years ago, it was pretty much universally acknowledged from everybody that is or was in the band, the Eagles, that Glenn Frey was the designated musical director of the band for all intents and purposes. He was the one that had the greatest influence and the greatest say over how, in general, the band's music was put together. Obviously, when Don Henley writes a song, or even Joe Walsh or Timothy Schmit, obviously they're going to have a huge say in how things end up sounding. But all parties have given credit to Glenn Frey as being the resident musical director of the band. So we will give him those props as well. The One You Love from the summer of 1982. Boy, what a different vibe from that whole UK sound, right? Interesting to see how at the same time on the calendar, what was going on over there and what was going on over here, of course, among many other things. But there is a little interesting subset here of this Southern California thing that we're going to get into. I thought I'd kick it off with the Glenn Frey, and there's two more examples following this that you will want to hear and see. A couple songs that I'm going to guess probably flew under the radar for you the first time around there in the early 80s, but two great songs, and you're not going to want to miss these vocal performances by these two ladies that I've got coming up for you. That will be in the subsequent videos. Meanwhile, thank you for hanging out with me on a Saturday afternoon. Hope you enjoyed Glenn Frey. Did you know that one? Did you know about Glenn Frey's solo career? Do you agree with me that this is probably the high point of his solo career? He had some other good songs for sure. He certainly had songs that were bigger hits. You Belong to the City and The Heat Is On, etc., etc. But to me, this still stands sort of as the pinnacle for Glenn Frey in his solo career. Well done, Glenn. Coming back with more videos. See you on the next one. Here we go. Are you going to stay with the one who loves you, or are you going to work this time for the one you love?